The one that stopped it. President Obama had child separation. Now, I'll tell you something. Once you don't have it, that's why you see many more people coming. They're coming like it's a picnic, because let's go to Disneyland.
U.S. District Judge Robert Seaborg ruled that the administration lacked a legal basis under current law for adopting the policy of returning asylum-seeking Central Americans to Mexico while the requests for asylum are being adjudicated.
Our government has betrayed us. President Obama betrayed us. Gavin Newsom, every Jerry Brown, almost every legislator in California has put illegal aliens ahead of American citizens. And the results are a lot of crime and a lot of death.
Our own name is in question now. It's no longer the U.S. House of Representatives, because under Speaker Pelosi, you take away the suspensions, more than 20% of the bills have been resolutions that go nowhere, that will not even make it to the president's desk. It's become the U.S. House of Resolutions.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey there, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. We have a jam-packed program for you again today. We're going to chat with Kyle Sammin. He's a contributor to the Federalist about this idea that it's somehow racism to ask judicial nominees tough questions about their record and their legal philosophy. It's interesting because the charges of racism stem from tough questions by Republicans, but Democrats are allowed to ask about what people believe about homosexual practices, sexual practices, all kinds of things that are kind of bizarre, and they're allowed to be screamed at and yelled at and treated like garbage. But the minute you start asking about judicial philosophy and really delving into someone's background and trying to find out where their beliefs come from, where they're rooted, kind of what forms the basis for how they would rule, that's racism. Just like everything's racism. Remember, everything is racist now, which completely obliterates the legitimate actual incidences of racism. There's no need to even talk about that anymore. Like if you have something happen to you and it's actually racist, like verifiably racist from like a white supremacist, and I know it's rare, but if it does happen, forget about talking about it, because the left has used the term racism and racist so ridiculously, so ubiquitously, that there's just you can't even use it anymore. All you got to do is say racism, and you see people, they roll their eyes, they sigh, they just can't handle it anymore. They've heard it so much. They hear it on the news all day, every day. Every conversation is rooted in racism. Even the discussions around what are the true root causes of systemic poverty. Well, we have to fight racism. Okay, so if someone's poor, the last thing in the world they're worried about is racism. They're thinking about food, shelter, necessities. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent now. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We actually, we're going to talk about Chelsea Clinton thinking that banning abortion is unchristian. If you've ever heard perversion of the word of God, if you've ever thought to yourself, I wonder what that sounds like, I'm going to let you hear it from her mouth, a little bit of audio of her talking like that. And then you've got yet another American, a dad. His son was killed by an illegal alien in California. And he's actually going up against Gavin Newsom yet again to try to figure out just what is Gavin Newsom's issue? Why can't he ever side with Americans? He's in South America running around, giving aid and comfort to those who want to send people here. Some of them are great people, but they're all entering illegally. And the ones that aren't great people are killing Americans. And Gavin Newsom just does not care. I think he thinks he's too pretty to care, right? If you've ever seen him speak, the way he kind of, moves himself around, you're like, oh, he's like a peacock. He's like, look at my face. It's pretty. And I'm sure, of course, I guess maybe so. Who knows? Who cares? He's the governor of California. I'm much more concerned with what's inside his head. What is he thinking? Or does he actually have the ability to think? So we'll talk about that. The Secret Service has come under fire for the incident last week at Mar-a-Lago when the president was there. There was this Asian woman, Chinese national, who was, trying to sneak malware and other things into Mar-a-Lago. And the Secret Service made a little bit of an error. I think it was a mistake, obviously not what they intended on doing. And they're receiving a lot of fire over it. And then I want to talk about from 1990 to 2013, 1.1 billion people in America escaped extreme poverty. I'm sorry, not in America. 1.1 billion worldwide escaped extreme poverty. Now, why would that be super important to us? Well, because we want people to escape poverty. That should be one of our chief aims, is to enable people to have the pathway to do that. So we'll talk about that as well. We'll take your calls at 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Right now, so for the encouragement today, I just want to share something with you, and I'm not going to give out any names or anything, but I got an email from a listener who said that they felt that they knew what happens in abortion clinics, and being pretty soft-hearted and easily moved, they didn't feel like they were going to go see Unplanned. But because I kept kind of insisting last week that it was, super important to go see it, they went to see it. And they felt that it was actually beneficial to see it, even though they're well acquainted with Planned Parenthood and everything that they do, and that it really changed their perspective and it was worth their time to go and see it. And so I'm sharing that because that was pretty encouraging to me. And also they were responding to when we were praying last week about just all the things that have been going on, and we're praying for the situation at the border and all of that. And I'm saying, be not weary in well doing, for in due time you will reap if you do not faint. That's the Bible encouragement for us. But I want to say, to encourage other people, that you are in the same situation as this couple, where they didn't feel like they needed to go, but they did. They went outside their comfort zone, they stretched themselves, and they were blessed because of it. And I think there's something in the movie for everyone. And even if you're one of those rare people who you don't know anyone who's ever had an abortion, you've never had one, no one in your family's had one that you're aware of, I would still recommend you going, because maybe it's outside your family, people that you're working with, and you never know when someone's going to share or broach the topic with you. And this movie gives a lot of great insights on how to talk about this and how to respond for people who have experienced reproductive loss, and how to really be there for them. It's a great film, and it's worth your time. And it's not one of those B movies where you're thinking, geez, who shot this thing? Or it was in someone's backyard. Not at all. It's really well done. So I encourage you to take a look at it. Here's the graphic if you're watching on the live stream. Unplanned in theaters everywhere. You got a 30-minute sneak peek that you can get by texting BABY to 53445. Text BABY to 53445. Or go to unplanned.com, unplanned.com. You can also tweet them at unplanned. They have a really vibrant Twitter presence there. It's pretty fantastic. So right now, let's talk about this ISIS jerk. He's a jerk. He's in America, and instead of loving it, you know how I am about that. Love it or leave it. That's how I feel about it. Do not come here and hate America or Americans because what could be your good reason for that? So this guy, he said he was very upset with people for not being Muslims, and he was feeling as if, that for some reason, and I don't understand his background on it, but he wanted to carry out a France-style ISIS attack just miles from the White House. Now, he's a jihadi. He lives in Maryland, and he was planning to do a massacre similar to the truck massacre that happened in Nice, France back in 2016. Now, Prince George County police officers were the ones who caught this and stopped it from happening. According to WJLA, and there's a criminal complaint and court documents that have been filed on March 26th. The Alexandria Police Department was contacted concerning this leased U-Haul vehicle. The U-Haul vehicle was actually stolen from a parking garage at a mall in Alexandria, Virginia. The driver who had rented the U-Haul vehicle noticed a man driving a blue BMW follow him off of 395 onto mall property, and then follow the U-Haul into the parking garage and park a few spaces away. So then police responded to the garage. They found the BMW near the parking space where the U-Haul had been parked. So they looked at the BMW's registration records and saw that it was registered to someone whose last name was Henry. Well, after that, the U-Haul, so that this a day later or so, March 27th, the stolen U-Haul is located at National Harbor. Law enforcement reviewed video surveillance of the area, and that showed that the guy, Henry, the same one who the BMW is registered to, he'd actually parked and then exited the stolen U-Haul. Now, he was arrested the next day. For 2 years, Henry has harbored hatred for those who do not practice Islam. Allegedly inspired by videos he watched of foreign terrorists, he decided to conduct a vehicular attack, and he drove around. He was at Dulles International Airport in Virginia at approximately 5 a.m. on March 27th, and he tried to get in, but he couldn't breach the security. He was just like trying to figure out how to get into the airport. So when he couldn't get in, he decided he was going to drive over to the White House and run down a bunch of people near there or near National Harbor, which is where CPAC is held. It's a huge tourist destination with lots of hotels. There's even an Air Force One. I'm not sure if it's Carter era or Reagan era, but it's an Air Force One out there park that you can take tours of. So there's a lot for people to go and see and do and stay in hotels and shop and eat at restaurants. And he was planning on driving the U-Haul over there and running some people down in that area. Now he's been apprehended, and they're crediting Prince George's County police officers and others at National Harbor for being really, really quick on the uptake and, capturing him before he could do anything. So again, for people who like to say that people who are concerned, as I am, about the kind of immigration we have where we don't vet people and we don't assimilate them and we don't require that they become Americans and that they accept the fact that we have all different kinds of faith traditions here in the United States, but that this is a Judeo-Christian country and that Christians have a right to be here and we have a right not to be run down or attacked because we don't practice Islam. And if we have a problem with Islam, we have a right to have a problem with Islam, and there's nothing you can do about it. They're not teaching anybody that anymore. It's just bring your old self over here from your third world pit and behave however you want to, and we're supposed to accommodate them. I'm not into accommodating over here. Not today. What we need to do is, if a person is coming from one of these Muslim origin countries and they want to be an immigrant into the United States, whether it's refugee or whatever, and they can't say affirmatively that Christians have the right to believe in Jesus Christ, and that they can't actually say that that right extends to every single American and that leaving Islam is not apostasy, if they can't say that, they should immediately be turned around and told, you like it here because you ain't getting into America. That's what we know. You won't be getting up in here. Yes, that bad English, that's what they should translate right on over to those folks. If they can't understand that we practice Christianity here with impunity and that is our right, then they should not be here. But I mean, like as we all know, because I'm sitting here doing this radio show, I'm not in charge of immigration. How about that? I'm not in charge of getting which refugees can come and which can't. I just, again, God bless the folks who want to come into this country and lawfully immigrate here, or refugees whose countries are war-torn and they want to be here. But you don't have a right to be here if you weren't born here. And you don't have a right to come in here and get mad at people because they don't want to practice Islam. Like, have you even looked at it yourself? You don't seem happy practicing it, because that's the funniest thing about the practice of Islam is that if the practitioners were happy about practicing it, other people would see them and go, man, those practitioners of Islam are so happy. They just have so much going for them. It looks exciting, doesn't it? Doesn't it look fun the way they're always smiling and enjoying themselves? The way they have all of this freedom and liberty and they've come to America and made the most out of it? The way they get to let their hair blow free in the wind and get a little bit of, when your hair gets a little bit of color to it because you've been out in the sun for, a week or so on vacation and you come back and your hair is a little brassy. Look at them. Just look at them enjoying their lives. Look at the way they're taking advantage of being an American. I got to find out what that is they're doing with themselves. When is the last time you ever heard anybody say that about Islam? And he's mad because we don't want to try it? He doesn't even like it. Why should we like it? I can't with these people. They should be glad to be here among us. They're lucky. All right, when we get back, we'll have Kyle Sammin of the Federalist. Stay right there.
Take your place alongside us so we can stand in the gap for the next generation.
Hello, my name is Jacob. Urban Family Talk has really been a blessing. I like the fact that they're biblical, and they're showing that is the foundation. This prayer is how we're going to make it. I just encourage them to keep doing the same thing. They're making a tremendous impact. They could be on the other side of the phone and understand what they're doing. They will be shocked. They're doing a fantastic job. God bless them. God bless AFA and AFR. Keep doing the same thing.
God is using Urban Family Talk to influence the lives of listeners across America. Join us for our 3-day share-a-thon, April 23rd through 25th, here on listener-supported Urban Family Talk. It's time to take a stand.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with A Legacy Moment. I remember reading a refreshing, insightful book, but then I came across a section in the book in which the author tried to give an elaborate and almost forced explanation as to why a certain person did some very bad things. I placed the book down and kind of mulled over in my mind what I just read. I thought maybe, just maybe, this guy did these bad things simply because he was wicked and sinful. Now, I don't mean to downplay contributing factors to our propensity to do wrong things, and sometimes those factors are quite complicated or lodged in our backgrounds. But honestly, we do bad things because, at the core, we're wicked. There's bad stuff inside of our hearts. Listen to Psalm 36, verse 1. Transgression speaks to the ungodly within his heart. There's no fear of God before his eyes. Did you hear that? Transgression, not some dysfunctional relationship, but transgression speaks to the ungodly within his heart. There's no fear of God before his eyes. That verse is pretty straightforward. In fact, it says evil is present in us. Transgression, by its very nature, knows no boundaries. It means to trespass, to go beyond limits, to do what is not right. Transgression says, I don't like those boundaries, and I'm going to cross them. Within all of us is the tendency of the arrogant disregard of consequences. We want to do what we want to do, whether it's lying or lust or acting out on that lust or manipulating people or greed. Transgression speaks inside our hearts. It says, do that, do that, do that. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. Don't ever underestimate the depths of your own wickedness or make excuses for bad, sinful behavior.
Join Crawford Loritz tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the program. Thank you for making your home at American Family Radio. Find out more at AFR.net. Also visit our news site, onenewsnow.com. You'll love the content over there. They do extra research. They don't just rip and read, and the content is fantastic. The guys who actually work there often come on the program and contribute here, and so it'd be wonderful to have you check out the onenewsnow.com news site that we really enjoy having that. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Kyle Sammin, contributor to the Federalist. Hey, Kyle, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Stacy.
It's good to talk to you. I'm wondering how it's racist to just ask judicial nominees about their legal philosophy.
It's a good question. What I was writing about, what we're talking about today, is the nomination of Naomi Rao to the D.C. Circuit. And one Republican, Josh Hawley of Missouri, had some hard questions for her because he wanted to make sure that she really believed in conservative judicial principles. So he held up the nomination for a bit. And the reaction to that from one law professor at the legal blog Lola Conspiracy was to say that this was identity politics, and even he said he's not going to say it's racist, but implied there was some racism involved. And it was disappointing coming from someone on the right. We're used to these tactics.
Kyle, I got that wrong.
From the other side.
I got that wrong. I thought this was a leftist screaming racism. You're saying someone right-leaning thought it was racist to ask Naomi Rao a few tough questions.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, David Bernstein is one of the, most law professors do lean right, but he writes for Lola Conspiracy, and his book what's it called, reconsidering Lochner, I think, is, he's a man of the right for the most part, which is why I was kind of so surprised at this, and so were a lot of other commentators on the right, because this is what we're supposed to be doing, right? I mean, senators are supposed to make sure that nominees are up to the job and have the right principles for the job.
So what exactly is it that Senator Hawley, who happens to be the junior senator from the state that I live in, I voted for Mr. Hawley, and I felt like we did pretty well in watching him unseat Claire McCaskill. In fact, I was exuberant about it, to be honest. But what was he querying her on, and what were the tough questions? Because I think if it's actually wonderful to see someone nominated by the president. I'm assuming Naomi Rao, she's on the right. She's nominated by the president to fill this role. And to have tough questions coming from her own side, quote unquote, that's actually the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And his specific issue, I mean, generally it was whether she was sufficiently pro-life. An important question. But it also got down to like the legal issue of, in constitutional law, how the Bill of Rights applies to the states, whether it's through substantive due process or through the Privileges and Immunities Clause. And that's usually something you don't debate much outside of law schools and legal blogs and things, but it does matter, because one of the ways that Roe v. Wade was justified was through the substantive due process thing, which is sort of a pretty broad, fuzzy way of saying that we have certain rights and it's not clear which ones they are, and they can be applied against the states, and that leaves judges a lot of discretion, as it did in 1973 when they used this principle to make abortion the law of the land. Whereas the principle in a lot of originalists and right-leaning judges and lawyers depend on is the privileges and immunities idea, which is that the Bill of Rights apply to the states, not just any rights that the judge thinks is important.
And did she respond incorrectly?
I think she clarified her position, and other people who know her, including, I believe, Justice Clarence Thomas, vouched for her, and she was approved. And that's also, but the problem is this is kind of an important debate on how we interpret laws, and when you start throwing around accusations of racism, there's no room left in the conversation for these serious issues, because everyone's just, that's what grabs the headlines, of course.
I just feel like, so it's too much for us at this point to, like, it's overwhelming the amount of allegations of racism that are constantly being thrown around. It's too much for us to go up against. We end up with this, it's like we're in no man's land where everything's racist, which means therefore nothing is racist, which means people have to bark and scream about it ever louder, and other people within earshot of them have to strain to ignore it, which makes it, worse than, it's like the worst climate we've had since we were back in the civil rights kind of, pushing and trying to figure out what is the right role of Black people in society and whites, and how should we interact and how should we live together. And that was a really contentious time that I'm sure most Americans we're so glad that's behind us. We don't want to go back there. Yet here we are, where almost anything is racist, even if the person is of color and they're commenting about something that has nothing to do with race. Racism is the primary charge. You're just a racist. It's so prevalent, Kyle, that when liberals attack me for holding right-sided views, I usually tweet them back somewhere at some point. I'll say, it sounds like you're a bit of a racist, which they immediately say, I can't be a racist. I'm not a racist. I'm a Democrat. And I'll say, but I'm Black and you're disagreeing with me. And I thought that's the rule that y'all set. And then they leave.
That's their rules, isn't it?
Yeah, that's their rule. But then they leave because they don't want to deal with that. And they certainly don't want me to call them a racist, because just the charge itself, it's so loaded and it's so horrible that most people recoil from it instantly, because they're like, well, I'm not a racist, but I can't disprove the negative. So I just have to leave this conversation.
Right. So then you can't have the conversation anymore, and the conversation's over, even if it was something that wasn't about racism. It was actually about some other principle that's worth talking about. And then you also get this problem is if everything gets called racist, then what do you do when something really is racist? Then it's sort of the boy who cried wolf. No one's listening anymore, and how do you then alert people to something that really is troubling and really should be looked at for those much, they render the whole thing meaningless.
Well, so what I'm looking for here is, I mean, obviously, people can have disagreements on whether or not someone is sufficiently conservative or what have you to be able to do a job. And Naomi Rao, I think there were some concerns with her, weren't there? Or was that just kind of little tweets from nowhere? I thought there were some concerns with some of her positions.
Well, I think part of the problem is that she had not been a judge before, which a lot of appeals court judges aren't. She had worked in the administration in dealing with regulations and had done a fantastic job there. So I think it was more, I mean, maybe, I don't know what the senator heard, but, you know, maybe he had some concerns. Maybe they were justified, but it seems like everybody else thinks she's doing a great job and is going to have just, you know, the right principles to uphold, you know, conservative legal rulings. So I guess we'll see. There's no way of knowing, but I think it was good of him at least to question it. Even if we like the president's nominees generally, we shouldn't just ram everybody through without thinking about it.
Yeah, well, and because I think what's ended up happening in the past, and what I think maybe Josh Hawley and Mike Lee were concerned with, is that we have had judges before who've seemed pretty conservative on their face. And I shouldn't say conservative. They've seemed as if they respected and believed in the Constitution. And then when they get on the bench, they issue these rulings where you're like, whoa, like, this is not what we put you there for. But by then it's too late. So that during the confirmation process is when you want to ask these questions before you cast your vote, because once they're there, they're there.
Yeah, there's no way out. I mean, like you said, we saw that with Justice Stevens and Justice Souter, who were both nominated by Republican presidents and both ended up siding with the Democratic nominees on the Supreme Court for decades. So it's important. I mean, you only get one shot at this. So I'm glad they took their time, but I'm also glad they approved who seems to be a good nominee.
Yeah, I'm looking at a little. You have a block out here in your piece about Bernstein seeing a suspicious pattern simply because Rao is the daughter of Indian Parsi immigrants and Liu is the daughter of Chinese immigrants. I mean, I love a fantastic backstory. I think all of that's important in considering, you know, the motivations behind whatever. But just because someone is an immigrant or has an immigrant background, that doesn't mean they're completely immune to hard questions. If we go there, then, I mean, that's a dangerous precedent to set, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that gets into sort of the intersectionality ideas of the left, where it's not important what you believe. It's just, you know, which cross-section of society you come from. And yeah, I agree. We should definitely be happy that, you know, immigrants and the children of immigrants are doing well in America and are I mean, that's the American dream. But it also shouldn't go the other way and say, yeah, we can't ask hard questions because it might seem improper. I think I thought Bernstein's point was sort of hard. That pattern didn't really make a pattern to me, because there were three other Asian nominees to circuit courts that were enthusiastically received and approved by the Senate with, you know, no objections from the Republicans and some Democrat votes too. So it was a weird kind of it was a weird article for him to write, and doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, you point also out it's really interesting. They have interesting backgrounds for sure. That they were actually, both of them are members of Jewish congregations, even though they're not, you know, what you would traditionally consider to be Jewish in their presentation. They're married to Jewish people and they are members of Jewish congregations. So they have really, like, they're the cornucopia that is the American experience is kind of represented in both of these people. I think it actually would be a sign of how qualified they are if they have two. I mean, we're talking about impressive people. Josh Hawley argued the Hobby Lobby case before the Supreme Court of the United States. And Senator Mike Lee is known for his intellect and his, you know, he's just got a wide ranging knowledge base on these things. He's such an asset in the Senate. So to have the two of them ask tough questions of these nominees and for them to then go on to be confirmed is not only it's proof of the opposite, isn't it? That not only are these people not racist, but that they put these people through a tough process. You can never go back and say, well, the Republicans just coasted their nominees through and they never asked them anything hard. This gives them more validity in my mind.
It's a great point, because they're both serious senators that were asking these questions. These are not guys who were just looking for a headline or looking, got their eye on the next office. They're not running for president like half the Democratic senators are right now. They're serious about doing a good job in the Senate, and that's great. They're intelligent senators who are asking hard questions, and I think that's the system working as it should.
Me too. I'm glad that, and I don't agree with Bernstein's, his piece that he wrote or his allegation or his charge against them. But I do think that you writing about it and bringing it to the forefront makes for a good conversation for all of us to kind of have and turn over on how we want this tougher process, and we want to be certain that the judges that are confirmed are who they say they are on paper, and who, especially for those who haven't held a judgeship in the past, for them to be able to withstand the onslaught. Because I just don't you sometimes wonder what happened to those Supreme Court judges that were confirmed by Republican presidents and had such strong conservative credentials going in, and they immediately turned to the left and never looked back? Like, it's interesting to me that we've never found out why. They've never given interviews. They've never told us why they went that way.
Yeah, maybe they were always that way, and the Senate just didn't ask the right questions. Maybe. I mean, part of it was in those days the hearings were a little less contentious than they are today. I mean, part of that was good because they're kind of crazy now sometimes. Yeah. But maybe it was just maybe it was there for all to see, and we didn't see it. So at least we're kind of correcting for that now.
Yeah, I agree. Well, great piece. I will put it up in the comments over at Stacy on the Right on Facebook and YouTube for people to check it out over at thefederalist.com. We love you guys. The work over there is excellent. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Stacy.
All right. Talk to you again soon. I'm a little tongue-tied. I don't know if it's because I've only had one cup of coffee or what, but so now I promised you in the first segment that we would hear the audio of Chelsea Clinton saying that she thinks banning abortion is unchristian. And then we got to talking about that guy who is in America but thinks we should all be practicing Islam, and I got off on a tangent. So let's circle back around to that. We have just enough time to listen to that. It's number 3.
But as a deeply religious person, it's also unchristian.
Whenever we talk about Roe, we're talking, that fight has been happening through the entirety of our lives. My mother had that fight. My grandmother had that. I mean, how can you keep from like the generational exhaustion?
When I think about all of the statistics that are painful of what women are confronting, Zerlina, today in our country, and what even more women confronted pre-Roe, and how many women died, and how many more women were maimed because of unsafe abortion practices. We just can't go back to that.
Yeah, it's just unchristian, right? So, first of all, she says it's been going on her entire lifetime. Her mother and her grandmother were fighting for the right to abortion, and it's just generationally exhausting. Well, I'm not generationally exhausted. Are you? I'm speaking to the pro-life warriors out there in the listening audience. Are we generationally exhausted? Not even in the least, not in the slightest. We're ready to continue this fight until our dying breath. And that's not some euphemism for violence or anything. I'm just talking about a lifelong struggle against evil that we're engaged in, that we are not tired. We're not tired. We are not tired. So Chelsea and her mother and her grandmother should gird their loins, because the battle is on, and it is those who are most fervent in their desire to win who will conquer in this. And I think it's going to be us, pro-life, supporting what God's word says. When we get back, we'll have more for you. Stay there.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
As a husband and wife, Lauren and I have always tried to find common interests. Growing up, Lauren was athletic but never followed professional teams. Not only was pro football my job, but I always seemed to be watching sports on TV. Over the years, Lauren has tried to watch with me. Throughout our marriage, I have looked for things I could do that she enjoys as well.
That's right. For example, I'd love to read and discuss books, but Tony doesn't. The idea of a book club pains him, but I know that he supports me in the things that I like doing. In any marriage, the key is respect and understanding of the other's needs ahead of your own.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Fellow Americans and all of our friends, join me nightly right here on Urban Family Talk. DCL Bryant Show, 7 p.m. Central, as we build the bridge to conversation throughout our great nation, the greatest nation on the face of the planet, the greatest success story the world has ever known. That'll be America, 7 p.m. on Urban Family Talk.
There are many ways you can listen to the shows of Urban Family Talk. One of those ways is through our very own app. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android, just go to the App Store and search for Urban Family Talk. You'll have immediate access to 24-hour programming as well as the podcast for each show. You'll be able to tune in no matter where you are. Speaking of tuning in, we have our own channel on another radio app called TuneIn. Cool, right? Urban Family Talk is everywhere. Just download the app and take us wherever you go.
Securing America.
In the midst of a heated debate on immigration, lawmakers are grappling with fixing what they call America's broken immigration system. Legislators like Florida Representative Blaise Ingoglia are hoping to take the lead on Trump's agenda. Republican state leaders are seeking to prohibit sanctuary policies, forcing towns to cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement.
These sanctuary city policies start off with somebody who was arrested for breaking Florida law, and then they find out if they're here illegally. There's no racial profiling going on.
University of Miami politics professor Michael Touchton says the bill has also raised concerns over giving Washington too much say on Florida decision-making.
This set of bills reverses some of these traditional principles.
In Miami, Alina Shirazi, Fox News.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Newsom is one of the three people that I consider directly related to my son's death. He was the mayor of San Francisco when my son was killed, and it was his policy a year before that if you're in the country illegally, you can drive in San Francisco without a license. And the guy who killed my son was caught prior to that, and they just dropped the charges, let him go. He continued to drive till he killed my son. So Newsom, he's ignoring his own state and worrying about everything else. He's posturing for a run for presidency, and he's not that he's not going to run right now, but if Trump wins another term, he'll be running in 2024, and that's what he's doing right now. And I think it was 2013. When he was lieutenant governor, I sent him a pretty long letter. I contacted his chief of staff, who promised that he would read it, and and he had nothing else to do other than to promote his book. No, and it's not just Newsom. No Democrats, and I was a lifelong Democrat, no Democrats will ever respond to any victims. And look, if he hears this, he knows where he can find me, aviac.us, or he can contact you guys. I'll fly to Sacramento in a second to sit and talk to him and try to let him understand what California's policies are doing to California.
And let's make no mistake about it. This father has lost his son, and his son's never coming back. The ultimate form of family separation. You were listening to his son was killed in California. His name's Dan Rosenberg, and he was on Fox and Friends talking about this. And I just want to point out that He said he was a Democrat. And then this happened. And he saw how he was just completely ignored and mistreated by people in his own party. His son was killed. And he couldn't even get a response back from Gavin Newsom, who at the time, or the governor at the time, Gavin Newsom, back when his son was killed, Gavin Newsom was the lieutenant governor. So this man is just Dan Rosenberg's a victim, and he's a family member of a victim. And Gavin Newsom this man holds him directly responsible because it was Gavin Newsom, along with others who were elected at the time, who decided that sanctuary city status was appropriate. And so the guy who killed his son, he'd been arrested before for drunk driving and released. Had they simply cooperated with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the guy would have been deported and he couldn't have killed Mr. Rosenberg's son. So this is important. And it keeps happening. That's the thing that I hate. It's one thing when it happens and you find you're like, oh, this happened. It's another thing when it just keeps on happening and you're just like, oh my goodness, why doesn't someone do something about this? Why not? Well, because Gavin Newsom's down in South America right now, palling around with folks who send people here illegally. They don't send us their best people. Yeah, I said it. Now what? All right, let's go to the phones. We have Jake in Arkansas. Thanks, Jake, for calling the show.
Yeah, hello. How you doing, Stacy?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. Somebody need to wake me up. I don't understand how somebody illegal can come in our country and protest against our laws, against our rules, and what we believe in. I don't understand how can they come over here and do this, and the Democrats think it's okay.
Well, I thought to myself the same thing you thought, but I spent some time reading some articles. This was like a week ago, or it might have been longer than that. Anyway, I was reading some articles, Jake, about this. It's the president or prime minister of Hungary, and he was talking about, there's a little bit of audio of him talking about it, but then there's actually like an article where he's talking about how they allowed people to come into Hungary from, Islamic countries, and they were migrants and they needed somewhere to stay, and they brought them in, they put them in, kind of like public assistance type situations, housing, gave them, food and clothing, and started trying to help them assimilate. And he said the first thing that would happen is they'd get there and they would be upset because there are churches all over Hungary, and on Sundays sometimes they ring church bells, or people would be going to church, or you could hear outside the church, you could hear people singing. And they would say these churches, all these crosses and these churches are offending us. And so his countrymen were like, oh, well then take them down, cover up the crosses. Like, we don't want to offend our new people. And he said that was a mistake. After a few years of doing that, the people who were complaining about the crosses on churches and the sound of church bells began to complain when people weren't practicing Islam. So what you're asking, Jake, is a fantastic question. We should not go down that road. We see it happening over there, and we need to stop it from happening here by saying, I'm sorry, what'd you say? You don't like church? Oh, so you don't, I thought I heard you say you didn't like being here. Because we can help you with that. Your citizenship is revocable. Do you have somewhere else you'd like to be? Like the place you came from? We can send you back to that hot, unair-conditioned, unpaved place. We can get you there in 12 hours. We got planes smoking out of America every hour of every day. Let's see how quickly we can get you. And how many of these people with you are your relatives? Because it's not good enough to just send you. These bad ideas you have to have infested others. Let's all of y'all who have these same ideas, raise your hand if you think Christians shouldn't be allowed to be wherever they are. Get your hands up and also grab your suitcases. Let's go. That's the attitude we should have. Until we have an attitude like that, we're going to continue to have these maniacs trying to run us down and do things to us. How basic do you have to be mentally to see other people not practicing Islam and get mad about it and stay mad for 2 years? And obviously he's not working, right? Just think about, y'all just sit here with me for a second. Just think about how hard you work. Just think about sometimes how you get home and you've worked so hard you can't even think. Have you ever worked that hard? I remember being on active duty and they put us on shifts. We were doing an exercise. So we had to pretend that we were going in and out of a war zone. So we had to carry our mobility bags on our backs everywhere we went. And we had to work 12-hour shifts, and we had to do our combat specialty. So I wasn't in an office. I was working my combat specialty, and I would go there, and I'd have to go through the whole process of decontamination to go get into the area, screening everything. And then in order to leave, it took another 45 minutes to leave. After my 12-hour shift, I would leave, and I'd have to decontaminate to get out of there and ride a bus, even though I had a car, ride a bus back over to the dorm where I lived on base. This is on Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. And I remember sitting there one time just after I got through the decontamination process, and a few people were joking on the bus, and I thought to myself, Lord have mercy. I wish I had their energy. They're joking around. Now remember, I'm in my early 20s. I have a lot of energy. I am physically fit, and I just worked a 12-hour shift. And I was so tired, I couldn't think straight. I just got off the bus and walked over to my dorm. I skipped the chow hall. I ate some granola bars I had stored in my room and got in the bed. And I slept for like 11 hours and got up and thinking I'd missed the start to the next shift, but I hadn't. I went down to chow hall and ate after I got dressed and got my mo bag and got on the bus and rode back over for the next 12-hour shift. You know, we know this because we're hard workers. You can work so hard that your eyeballs feel tired, that you're just exhausted, that you just know you've earned every bit of what you've got. And I know a lot of us Americans have worked that hard. And I'm not saying we're perfect people or we've never sinned or we don't put our pants legs on with one leg at a time. That is not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is when you have a job and you have responsibilities and the taxpayers aren't giving you your food and your clothing and your housing and everything else you've got, you don't have time to be worried about who that person over there is, what kind of religion they're practicing. You don't have time to worry about whether or not they're the same faith as you because you're too busy trying to get your life done. And by the time you get done with everything you have to do, you haven't had 2 seconds to sit down and think about somebody else not practicing Christianity. I mean, that's just not even the way our religion works, is it? Christianity is about us as disciples of Jesus Christ, discipling others into the faith, no unwilling dragging or anything like that. You can't even be a Christian unwillingly. If you are unwilling, you are not a Christian. It's just so not our thing. So the thing is, if we're going to have this conversation, we have to kind of talk about this. It gets uncomfortable for some folks, but I'm here for it. Some things are incompatible with the Western civilizational model. Some things are incompatible with liberty and freedom. I don't like the fact that we have a growing movement of people who claim to be atheists or agnostics in this country, but that doesn't mean they should be run down with box trucks or killed. It means we as Christians have to do a better job of presenting that salt and that light and that sweet fragrance of the Holy Spirit to these people so that they will know that there's a better way. At no point are we wanting to decapitate them or force them into submission so they can be Christians. But people who do believe that way about their religion, their way of thinking kind of doesn't work. And by kind of, I mean it absolutely does not work with Western civilization. And so you got to kind of go back. You go back a little bit and you kind of start back at square one. Why do so many people who practice Islam want to immigrate into Christian countries? Why don't Syrians who have been displaced by civil war immigrate into Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Kuwait or Jordan or Iran or Iraq? Why don't they go to one of those other countries that practices the same religion that they practice? And I know, I've read lots of books about Islam, and I've listened to some pretty fantastic lecturers talk about it. And so I know that not all Islam is the same. Like there's Sunni and there's different kinds of practitioners of Islam. I understand that. But what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be easier for you to assimilate with someone who's at least practicing something that sounds similar to what you're practicing than to come over to America and start running people down with trucks because nobody here that you can find wants to submit? I mean, it's just so basic. So that is my question for every single person who comes here to America. And I know the answer. You want to come to America because it rocks. Because there's, like I said, there's all this indoor plumbing, paved roads, freedom, jobs, television, internet, all this air conditioning. I mean, it just don't get much better than that, as people down from where my family is from would say. It just don't get much better than that. So what you going to do? You're going to want to come over here. But when you get here, be glad you're here. Be grateful that we let you in here. And stop thinking you can make somebody else do something, because that's why we still have all these, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, all that, because we believe that we've welcomed you in. That's all we really have to do for you. We don't then have to adopt your religion and start wrapping our heads in towels and treating women like property just because you're here. You go back to where you came from and practice that there. And if you want to practice it here, you have the right to do that, but you don't have the right to make other people do it. And that is just something that needs to be drummed into people when they're over there in the refugee camps and they're making their way through the 2-year process and everybody's complaining about how long it takes. It should take a little bit longer, because at least half of that 2-year process should be making sure that the people who are coming through are willing to admit that when they get here, if their wife wants to take that muumuu off and that headscarf and let her hair fly free, and you can't handle that, then maybe the wife should get to come and you stay back over there in wherever you came from, and let the women and the girls come on in, and they can let their hair fly free and be Americans and get educations and live their lives. And if you're not willing to let them do that, then you're not ready yet. You're like a cake that you pull out of the oven too soon, and the cake is still jiggly. You can't stand a toothpick up in it. You got to put that cake back in and let it bake some more. That's what you got to do. All right, let's go to the phones. Ernest in Michigan. Hey, Ernest, thanks for calling the show today.
Hey, thank you, Stacy. I love that comment you just made about the cake. I'll try to make this quick.
Thanks.
Yeah, that radical side of Islam who wants to be hit Christians, who want to convert. I'm thinking of what the Bible says. We're headed for this one world war and the beast and all that, and that will have a lot to do with it in the end times with this religious leader trying to promote all religions. I also want to comment on something that you said earlier yesterday. I'm thinking of the scripture in 2 Peter where the writer states, God is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. And so, you got this lifestyle of homosexuality and lesbianism and transgender, and everybody thinks they can do their own thing. We were bought with a price, and that price was the precious blood of the Lamb. We belong to him. And, I'm thinking about if we would judge ourselves, that's the less more that God would have to judge us. I was talking to a young man today at work, and he was saying, I'm 21, I can't wait till I start drinking. That opened up the conversation you to have with him. And I was like, man, you know what? If you would learn discipline at a young age, you can avoid a lifetime of heartache. And I just want to commend you again for your boldness, and I always pray that God will protect you and your family, but keep on being the bold soldier that you are for Christ's sake, because we're in a war. And yea, that all that shall live godly shall suffer persecution, some more than others. But when you become a Christian, you better understand that you signed up for mental, verbal, and physical persecution if necessary.
God bless. Thank you, Ernest. If you're still in the call queue, stick around. Right now, if you're leaving us, God bless you. We are so glad that you made your home at American Family Radio. And we encourage you to go to onenewsnow.com and check out the content there. If you're sticking around, you have more Stacy on the right after the break. Have a fantastic evening.
Being there is half the battle. 1milliondads.com exists to help Christian fathers to be present and intentional in the lives of their children. Our hope is to wake up the fearsome wonder that is the mighty man of God and restore him to his role as leader, teacher, and counselor. Visit 1milliondads.com. 1milliondads.com.
Truth, wisdom, Empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. Federal authorities say they've broken up a $1.2 billion Medicare scam that peddled unneeded orthopedic braces to hundreds of thousands of seniors via foreign call centers. The Justice Department announced charges today against 24 people in the U.S., including doctors accused of writing bogus prescriptions for unneeded back, shoulder, wrist, and knee braces. The call centers were located in the Philippines and throughout Latin America. A Texas company is suing the federal government for what it lost complying with a federal ban on rapid-fire weapons attachments.
Fort Worth company RW Arms says it has destroyed more than 73,000 bump stocks. However, the company, which billed itself on its website as a leading retailer of the attachments, says it has lost more than $20 million in revenue. Company officials say they're suing for fair market value compensation. The federal ban was imposed by the Trump administration following the 2017 shooting at an outdoor concert in Las Vegas, where 58 people were killed. The ban took effect last month, saying any sale or ownership of bump stocks could mean 10 years in prison and at least $250,000 in fines. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Firefighters are trying to get a handle on a brush fire that broke out in northwest Maricopa County, Arizona yesterday. The Arizona Department of Forestry's Tiffany Davila says it's already burned about 180 acres.
We did lose 2 structures. We're not sure if those are primary residences or outbuildings like a shed.
Winds are expected to pick up today, and that could make containment more difficult. South Bend, Indiana Mayor and presumed Democratic Party presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg is talking about his journey from closeted teen to open homosexual. AFN's Steve Jordahl reports he may have revealed more than he intended.
In a speech to a pro-gay political lobbying group over the weekend, Pete Buttigieg talked about his inner struggle when he realized he had unwanted same-sex attraction.
I would have done anything to not be gay. When I began to halfway realize what it meant that I felt the way I did, it launched in me something I can only describe as a kind of war.
He was so conflicted, his thoughts drifted towards self-harm.
There were times in my life when if you had shown me exactly what it was inside me that made me gay, I would have cut it out with a knife.
Ann Paulk of Restored Hope Network, a ministry to ex-gays, says most homosexuals go through that phase.
It's fairly common that someone who finds themselves dealing with same-sex attraction would prefer not to have them. Most people would like to have some quick answer.
But while Buttigieg and his gay activist allies say the solution is acceptance and pride in your sexual dysfunction, the high suicide rate of gay Americans, even after public disapproval has all but disappeared, shows that might not be the right solution for everyone.
I feel sorry for him that he would have gone to drastic measure when there are so much easier ways to handle this. In fact, non-coercive, non-pressure, non-aversive, but actually good counseling care.
She says in many cases, those with unwanted same-sex attraction find healing and restoration. I'm Steve Jordahl.
In world news this hour, 4 men are under arrest in Uganda in connection with the kidnapping of a California woman and her guide. Here's Jeff Whittle.
Ugandan police say they're now questioning the suspects in last week's kidnapping of Kimberly Endicott and her guide from Queen Elizabeth National Park. They're believed to be illegal fish traders and ivory smugglers. Endicott and her guide were found safe on Sunday. Ugandan officials say they didn't pay the $500,000 ransom the kidnappers demanded, but a tourism operator said an undisclosed amount of money was paid to secure Endicott and the guide's release.
And police in Japan have added a new weapon to their arsenal in advance of major events coming to the country. We get more on that from correspondent Bill Zimfer.
Japan's National Police Agency says it'll begin deployment of a drone gun. The device uses radio waves to block control of an illegal drone. A number of countries, including the United States, already have the technology in use, but Japan is adding the anti-drone weapon in advance of the G20 summit in June and the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo.
Stephen Black.
Because my molester spoke to me while being molested that I had somehow caused this,
I had a deep sense of darkness and shame. The thing that I see in others is ministering to them, this deep sense of shame. And that's what brings about healing once that is discovered that their innocence was taken from them.
The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference is coming June 20th through the 22nd. Learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I'm the one that stopped it. President Obama had child separation. Now, I'll tell you something. Once you don't have it, that's why you see many more people coming. They're coming like it's a picnic, because let's go to Disneyland.
U.S. District Judge Robert Seaborg ruled that the administration lacked a legal basis under current law for adopting the policy of returning asylum-seeking Central Americans to Mexico while the requests for asylum are being adjudicated.
Our government has betrayed us. President Obama betrayed us. Gavin Newsom, every Jerry Brown, almost every legislator in California has put illegal aliens ahead of American citizens. And the results are a lot of crime and a lot of death.
Our own name is in question now. It's no longer the U.S. House of Representatives, because under Speaker Pelosi, you take away the suspensions, more than 20% of the bills have been resolutions that go nowhere, that will not even make it to the president's desk. It's become the U.S. House of Resolutions.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. We are going to be chatting with Julie Gunlock, good friend of mine, and she's a fantastic Second Amendment defender and proponent. But she's going to be joining us to talk about this new rush to have everybody use reusable grocery bags to do their grocery shopping in. And first of all, ew. And I have the reusable bag, so this isn't about me not, believing in reusable bags or anything like that. We have some. I usually just recycle the plastic bags that we were given. We recycle them or we reuse them at home for something else. And so I think there are a couple of different ways of tackling it. And we're an innovative country, and we have a lot of brilliant minds in the engineering and organizational sectors of our economy who can help us figure out ways to lessen the impact of plastic bags. But Julie's going to talk to us about this banning of the bags in New York State and why it's a horrible, horrible precedent for them to set and what else we can do about it. And then we're going to be talking about these criminal referrals to Attorney General Barr this week. You might have caught Attorney General Barr this morning calmly picking apart the lunacy of the Democrats who just keep on attacking over the Mueller report. It's like kids in the back seat going, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet, Mom? Are we there yet?" You're like, "We will get there in like 10 hours, so calm down." They're going to get their report. They just need to calm down. All right, let's go to George in Missouri. Hey, George, thanks for calling the show today.
How you doing, Stacy? Thank you for doing what you're doing. I just wanted to. I don't catch you in this segment on the radio, but when you were talking about the people that don't like America, amen. Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. I listen to you all the time, and I call my senators and my congressmen, and I take it a little step further. If these Democrats that are in office that are working for us, if they don't love America and they're not helping America, maybe they ought to need to find another country too.
Thank you. That'd be fantastic. Only those guys were born here, so we can't just automatically get rid of them. And that's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing that you can't lose your citizenship for being an idiot. But it's definitely a problem that we have, and it's stemming out of our public education schools. The schools are teaching kids that America's bad, that America is the cause of all ills around the world, and that Americans have something that we need to pay. Like, we have too much prosperity, too much good things going on here, and that since people are the source of that, our evil deeds are the source of that, we need to somehow kowtow and bow down. And like Obama was the bower in chief, and he was always showing the top of his head to foreign leaders and stuff, instead of owning the fact that any nation of people is going to be flawed and make mistakes. But America on the whole has been a force for good rather than evil. If you put everything on scales and you say good and bad, where does America fall? And it's not because we're fantastic. And, I love being an American, but it's because God was in the mix in the beginning and he's still in the mix now. And it is the Christian, it's a part of who we are as Christians that we do good works and try to change things for the better. Right. And so that you see that everywhere you look. And it's so much so a part of what we do and what we feel like we have to do that overflows out of this country and goes out into the world where we're trying to do good. And, it doesn't always work out the way we want it to. But as human beings, we have to still be working to spread the good and contain the evil, which is what America has been really historically. That's what we've done. So, we got to stop these unionized teachers from teaching American kids that we're a bad country and that socialism would be better and that we're not a force for good and et cetera, et cetera. All that's got to stop. And if your kids are in public school, God bless you, because it is a total battle to keep up with everything that they're doing and try to stop them from really perverting what is a blessing. Because having a public school system such as the one that we have in America, or I should say had when our test scores were a lot better, it's a blessing to be able to say we're just going to move into this neighborhood and our taxes will pay for our kid to go to the school and, volunteer and show up to the plays and everything else and make sure your kid shows up to school prepared and, they're ready for college, which used to be the situation. And now it is still the situation for some kids, but not so much for others. That was a blessing. So it's sad to see us at a place where the kids who've been in public schools for the past 20 and 30 years are now young adults in college. They're finishing with college, or they're young adults in the workforce. And they all have a bone to pick with America. I know when I was growing up, we learned about slavery. We learned about the rougher parts of our history, but it was we never left the classroom thinking, geez, I'm ashamed to be an American. We left thinking, oh, wow, so that was a tough topic today. But look how it was resolved. In the end, we came to our senses as Americans on slavery. In the end, we took us a while, but we entered World War II and brought things to a close, and we did good there. We've done amazing things as a nation, and it's God's grace that we were able to do those things. So it's so sad to know that there are people running around drinking Starbucks, and catching Ubers and staying in Airbnbs and mad at America. It's just like, I don't get that. I don't get that at all. So now let's get to, I promised you this. Devin Nunes has said that Republicans are sending 8 criminal referrals to Attorney General Barr this week. It's number 1.
So I would say that, first of all of these are classified or sensitive, and so because a lot of them could contain sensitive or classified information. 5 of them are what I would call straight-up referrals, so just referrals that name someone and name the specific crimes. Those crimes are lying to Congress, misleading Congress, leaking classified information. So 5 of them are those types. There are 3 that I think are more complicated. So you mentioned conspiracy. So the question on conspiracy is what, there's the conspiracy statute, and then what do they need to look at under that statute? So on the first one is FISA abuse and other matters. We believe there was a conspiracy to lie to the FISA court, mislead the FISA court by numerous individuals that all need to be investigated and looked at, and we believe the statute is the conspiracy statute. The second conspiracy one is involving manipulation of intelligence. That also could ensnarl many Americans. And so that's kind of the second one. As you know, we've had a lot of concerns with the way intelligence was used. So that would be kind of the 2 conspiracy recommendations, referrals that we're making.
Wow. So this is what we were hoping for, and not because we want this to go on forever. I mean, God forbid. I actually wish that they could be there hammering out legislation that helps to ensure the safety of Americans and to tackle some of the issues that we're having. I noticed at the end of her little ebonics-laden speech, AOC which I just realized as I was listening to Abraham Hamilton, the third show, he calls her Alexandria Occasional Cortex. So you guys know I just couldn't help myself. That's hilarious. Anyway, that AOC mentioned that they want to do something about the opioid epidemic. And she said that last. So last on her list of priorities, out of all of that bumpio schmumpio, which those aren't real words, but that's like a thing over here at our house. That means it's nothing. That little phraseology means nothing. Whatever you're talking about, if you call it bumpio schmumpio, it means nothing. That list of nothingness that she was spewing, at the end of it, she puts, and do something about the opioid crisis. Really? Why don't you leave that to the grown-ups, honey? President Trump and his administration are doing something about the opioid crisis, namely getting China to designate fentanyl as a controlled substance, all derivatives of it, and to make it illegal to traffic it out of China and into our country. That's a huge win for us. Also, the dedicated funding and the programming that they've been working on for the entire 2 years he's been president, those are doing something, as you like to say, to coin your phrase. He's actually doing something about it. So don't worry. Y'all Democrats don't have to work on it. We'll just let President Trump continue to tackle the problem. Grown-ups in the room have it under control. Thanks, AOC. So he then goes on to discuss how there are these information leaks of classified intel. And this is really serious stuff. When classified information is leaked to the public, it can endanger the lives of operatives in the homeland and abroad. And it can also make it dangerous for things that are already in motion to continue, because it jeopardizes everything that's already been laid out. And it takes years for our intelligence agencies and our operatives to put together things that they're doing here and abroad. And to have people just willy-nilly leaking it and not getting in trouble, I mean, it's the very definition of the swamp. Let's listen to Nunez. It's number 2.
The third is what I would call a global leak referral. So there are about a dozen highly sensitive, classified information leaks that were given to only a few reporters over the last 2.5+ years. So, we don't know if there's actually been any leak investigations that have been opened, but we do believe that we've got pretty good information and a pretty good idea of who could be behind these leaks. It doesn't mean we know all the people that are behind the leaks, because when you read these, a lot of these, they're always anonymous sources, and they always say something to the effect of current and former senior officials. So we think we've got a pretty good idea of who some of the sources are behind these leaks. We don't know if the Department of Justice has been looking at these, but there's just been unprecedented things that happen.
So unprecedented things have happened. And in response to that, he's kind of like the lonesome dove over there trying to figure out what to do about it and trying to get some criminal referrals. And it's right for him to do that. But I just wonder why, even if you're opposed to everything that the president is doing, classified intel leaks are a sign that individuals who've sworn an oath to this country to protect and uphold the Constitution and to do other things for the FBI, the CIA, etc., that they've violated their security clearance, that they are obviously operating in ways that are jeopardizing the lives of other Americans. I don't care what your political affiliation is. You should be horrified by that, and you should be thinking to yourself, people have to be brought to justice. You cannot leak classified information without repercussions, or it jeopardizes the very system upon which classified information is based, namely that those who do not adhere to classified protocols for data dissemination and retention, those individuals, they jeopardize the work of everyone else. And they make everyone else who is keeping data secure, information secure, they make them, what are they wasting their time being so careful about who they email and on what phone and what they talk about and what they don't talk about? And when they get home from work and the wife says, "How was the day?" or the husband says, what happened good at work today? What do you know good? And they just tell the parts that are unclassified. Why don't they say, "You know what, guys, sit down. I got something to tell you." Or when they're out at happy hour or wherever with their friends on the weekend. And they're like, yeah, we know you work for, this agency or that agency. What can you tell us? And nothing, because it's top secret, right? And then they say, well, actually, I do have a couple of interesting things I can tell you. No one else is keeping classified InfoSec. Why should I? This is a problem. Thank God he's working on it. I hope we see some resolution here. When we get back, we'll have Julie Gunlock. Keep it here.
It's amazing but true. When it comes to one of America's biggest household expenditures, healthcare, a lot of people think they've got no choice. People are used to thinking we have to do it this way, but they don't. Yes, you have the freedom to choose an alternative with your healthcare. It's MediShare, and it costs way less than the alternatives. The typical family saves $500 a month, not a year, a month. And if you're single, this can save you a lot too. And let's face it, a big reason MediShare is 400,000 people strong, it just works. They've shared over $3 billion in medical bills, so they can help share your needs too. Joining MediShare for so many people is one of those things that makes you say, why didn't I do this before? So yes, the time has come for something better. Look into joining MediShare and see why so many people are opting out of the old way and into the new. Why not look into this? Just call 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Here's an important question. Will the courts determine the future of Obamacare? You might be excused for thinking the Supreme Court already decided that question, but there's another case that may affect the Affordable Care Act. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the bill because of 4 liberal justices and Chief Justice John Roberts. Roberts argued that the mandate in the bill was a tax, and since the federal government has the power to tax, the Affordable Care Act was constitutional. Let's now fast forward to the Republican-controlled Congress when it considered the tax reform legislation known as the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. They didn't eliminate the mandate, but they did zero out the penalty. That's when several states, through their attorneys general, filed suit claiming that the elimination of the tax penalty essentially invalidated Obamacare. Their argument was that removing the individual mandate caused the entire bill to collapse on itself. Back in December, U.S. District Judge Reed O'Connor agreed with their argument and struck down both the mandate and the entire law. The case is now making its way through the courts and may eventually end up at the Supreme Court. It is certainly possible that the case won't get that far. Many legal experts believe that it was a huge legal leap for Judge O'Connor to invalidate the entire law. But in an unexpected move, the Justice Department has sided with the federal judge. It's worth mentioning that all of this will be taking place during an election year. Since the Republicans could not agree on a replacement plan when they were in power, that's why Democrats are already making a big issue out of health care during this election cycle. I would highly recommend that some members of Congress start talking about what a replacement might actually look like. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Socialism, go to viewpoints.info/socialism. That's viewpoints.info/socialism.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you for being here today. You can find out more at stacyontheright.com and also AFR.net, urbanfamilytalk.com, and I'm Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram. It's my pleasure to welcome Julie Gunlock, Director of the Center for Progress and Innovation, Independent Women's Forum. Great organization. I love the women over there, and Julie is no different. Thanks for coming on today, Julie. Good to talk to you.
Oh, always thrilled to be on. Thanks for having me.
All right, girlfriend. Let's talk about this plastic bag thing. It's so gross. First of all, it's so gross. So I have some of the reusable bags myself. And what I do is if I put meat in them, then I know I have to put that bag into the wash. It has to be washed on hot. And, basically I got to clean that bag. So if I put something in the bag and it looks like it made a stain and I don't want that stain in my washing machine, then I just throw the bag away. And this is all extra work for me because with the plastic bags, I just recycle the ones back at the same grocery store I got them from in a bin outside the door. I just toss them in there. The ones that have had meat in them or something that I don't want to reuse. And then the ones that are dry on the inside, I reuse them as trash bags. And, hey, you got gym clothes you want to bring home? Here's a bag, that kind of thing. So what's the big deal here?
Yes, well, there has been a lot of misinformation about plastic bags. Many of them are recycled and recyclable. And so people, and again, you mentioned that grocery stores often allow you to drop off your grocery bags. I actually use store grocery bags around my house. They're incredibly useful. I use them for garbage bags, and I use them for other items, when my kid needs to take something somewhere. But you also are given the option to recycle these bags. I mean, it's almost standard operating practice now. The grocery stores encourage you to bring your plastic bags back. But of course, this is very similar to straw banning sort of craze that we've seen, where people in the West really want to find solutions and want to feel like they're part of the solution. And so environmentalists come up with these ridiculous little things like banning bags or encouraging people to use their own bags. Which again, I'm not criticizing people who use their own bags. That's fine, and I'll get to that in a minute. But is it really going to help, climate change? There's a new study out. You have to use a reusable bag, something like 152 times, in order for it to, in any way, make an impact similar to using one plastic bag and then just having that recycled. So the problem, too, is that, look, these bags can be, when you put meat in them, and sometimes even vegetables, they can become contaminated. I remember Mesh Sunuru at National Review wrote a fantastic piece a couple of years ago about really just how disgusting these bags can become, filled with bacteria. And the worst part is that people put their groceries in, they bring them inside, they empty them out, and we all know how busy people are, right? We're all busy, and they take the jumble of bags and throw them in a tank, where they sit in the hot sun, and that bacteria just multiplies and multiplies and multiplies, and pretty soon, a green pepper goes free, or a tomato goes free, or, somehow you are going to contaminate the fresh groceries that you're putting into contaminated bags.
Yeah. It's because, think about it, it's in the trunk of your car, and in the winter, it's great because it's so cold, you're like, there's nothing growing. But in the summertime, you put that bag that had that, vegetables or whatever in it.
Or meat.
It sits around in your trunk.
But it's not just that. It's also the idea that if there is, for any reason, something that you put in a bag that is contaminated, you could, even in the winter, if that bag, if there's chicken juice that gets on that bag, and then maybe some people use the bags inside their house, so it's not a matter of hot or cold. It could just be in your house. You can have these bacteria growing in these bags, even if it's, if it's the dead of winter. If you keep that bag inside in a pantry, say, or by the back door, and you grab it on your way out, it's just not a slow move. And again, we need to remember, look, there's been a lot of research into what are the contents of solution of things like landfills, and there's a lot of discussion that these plastic bags end up in the ocean, and these plastic bags are killing ducks and wildlife and fish. Well, they actually did studies, and it turns out that plastic bags are not the cause. They're not the thing that are clogging up the oceans and river basins and killing wildlife and fish. They just aren't. The numbers are actually very low. So again, it's similar to the straw issue, where you have all these woke businesses wanting to look like they're involved in their virtue signaling, and they're doing things like banning straws, which we saw Starbucks, Marriott Corporation, a number of other corporations have banned straws. Well, straws make up about 0.00000 tons of zeros and then some number, like 1.5% of the pollution that's in the ocean. The bulk, 99% of the ocean pollution is coming from 9 rivers, 7 of which are in Asia, 2 of which are in Africa, and it's mostly fishing equipment. It is people in developing nations that are dumping massive amounts of fishing equipment and plastic and garbage into the ocean, which is then being collected. But it is Asian and African countries. It is not some person sitting in Brooklyn drinking straws, and their stir, their coffee stir, ends up in the ocean. It just isn't happening.
So Julie, my producer is saying that we're having trouble, like hearing you over your cell phone. Can we disconnect and have you call back? Because sometimes it helps.
I think I had the phone away from my head, so I'm sorry. This might be better.
Okay, let's keep going. So the information you're giving is fantastic, because one of the things that I absolutely adore about you and IWF is any issue that I'm starting to get like riled up about, I can go to you guys and find out whether or not the rilage is warranted. I can actually find out, should I be upset because I'm eating too much sugar, or am I just listening to a bunch of people who don't want me to have any fun? Is it like the Bible says, everything in moderation, or should I really get mad and start boycotting X, Y, or Z? And you guys, like that information you just gave about the straws. Remember, we just went through this. The straws are going up the noses of animals, and that's why we can't have plastic straws anymore. Never mind the human beings who have to use a straw to drink because they have a disability. They have to have a straw to drink. And so these people are now having to carry straws with them. And I went so far, I got riled up, but this time justifiably so. I got riled and went the other way and said, y'all go to Amazon and you can buy 500 straws for like $11, and you can put them in individual bags and put them in your purse. Yeah. And whenever you go somewhere, you can have your own plastic straw, because if you need a straw to drink, then by all means, you should be able to have it without some whacked out liberal telling you're killing whatever you're not killing. Because what you're saying is, if we're recycling the bags, we're actually doing better than reusing the bags 152 times and possibly spreading E. coli.
That's exactly right. And, again, I don't want to discourage people. Look, if you want to use your own bag, but you have to be responsible with it. It does take extra steps. But again, I just feel like sometimes people take all these extra steps, but it accomplishes nothing. There's all these sort of ideas of banning styrofoam or banning plastic food containers. These things are convenience, and they are a convenience. And it seems today that a lot of very liberal environmental activists just hate the idea of convenience. They can't stand it. Well, you know what? Convenience is really good for me. I'm a busy mom. I have 3 boys. I make their lunches every single day. God bless individually bagged things of potato chips. I love just being able to throw those things in. I love being able to sometimes throw in a pack of cookies. Or, I love being able to have a little baggie so I can put some baby carrots in there. I don't want you to think I only give them disgusting food. I actually have them eat some healthy items. But the convenience of having little plastic bags or having little prepackaged items, it used to be considered progress. I talk to my mom all the time about what it was like when I was growing up, and there were not this many conveniences for parents. And so that's what frustrates me too, is this sort of idea that you should feel guilty for taking shortcuts or using convenience items. Well, convenience is a wonderful thing.
Julie, I gotta share my story about the little 100-calorie bags. Is I used to budget our stuff down to the penny, and so I would go to Sam's Club and buy 2 bags of chips for $3.88, and then I would come home and I would buy the tiny, it's called a snack Ziploc bag, and I bought the grocery store brand, so I was saving like $1 per box of those. So I'd buy 2 or 3 boxes of those, and I'd come home, and after I put all of the food away while the kids were playing, I would go through and I would fill each of those tiny little 100, they call them 100-calorie snack bags, but the original ones were the ones you filled yourself, and I would fill chips, pretzels, cheese puffs, whatever. And my kids would take a piece of fruit, but they would also have 1 or 2 of those thrown in, because on the bus, I would rather them have their own snack that they could take out and eat than eat off of a friend or, all that other disgusting stuff. And so I did that for years. And then the 100-calorie snack bags came out. And so I bought a box of 6. I undid the thing. I dumped out that 100-calorie bag of snacks into my snack size bag to see if it would be the same amount, because I would be paying for 6 instead of buying a whole bag of chips or a whole bag of cookies. And when I realized that it was less, 100 calories is less than that snack size zip bag. And my kids used to say, Mommy, why do you give us this tiny bag? Give us a sandwich size bag of chips. I'm like, because it's too much salt. You can't have that many chips 2 times a day. You're already having chips when you get home. So no, you can't have more. So this is like totally messing up my system. So I went for 2 or 3 years without using those until our oldest daughter, who's always the voice of logic and reason, even from afar via text message, she says to me, Mommy, you're working really hard filling these snack bags when you could give me one of the other pre-made ones. And I said, yeah, I am, but you're getting more. And she said, but the other bags are easier, don't you think? And then she just walked off. And so I started using the other ones after that. And I told her, you're not getting as much snacks, but sure, here they are. What you're talking about with convenience is it's so basic to the way we live here in America. And it's one of those things where I guess millennials and some others who are younger feel guilty about it, where I see it as it's wonderful because it frees up more time to do something else, like maybe gather up the plastic bags that you're done using, put them in a single bag, and take them to the grocery store with you next time. So throw them in your trunk, throw them in the back seat so you can recycle those. So if you think about it, if you take one convenience, you can use that time you save to recycle or to help the environment in a way that actually works.
That's exactly right. And, the thing is that we, in this country, we parent so intensely these days. We parent in a way that our parents would never recognize. From the time you deliver your child in the hospital, man, you better breastfeed that baby. And then when that baby starts eating food, you better make that baby food homemade. And man, when that kid starts getting older, you better bake the bread, and preferably you've grown the grain in your own backyard in order to make the bread. And then you better raise those chickens so you have farm fresh eggs. And my goodness, don't even think about giving them a Dorito, which will kill them instantly. I sometimes give speeches, and I swear my biggest applause line is when I say, hey, ladies, relax. Your kid isn't going to be in any way harmed if you throw a frozen pizza in the oven occasionally. And you wouldn't believe the reaction, because women are constantly told that by taking shortcuts or using conveniences, they're somehow doing a disservice to their family. There's a reason that we call the project at IWF the Progress and Innovation. Progress and innovation are wonderful things. It used to be wonderful that, we can produce bread that can sit on the shelf for a week without going bad because of the use of a tiny bit of a chemical called azodicarbonamide. Now, the use of a tiny trace amount of that chemical in a loaf of bread will keep that bread fresher for days and days and days. It used to be that, 2 days down the road, the bread would go stale or mold. And so nowadays you have the exact reverse. Now people are saying, oh, it's terrible that bread companies use chemicals in their bread. Well, again, this stuff used to be thought of as progress and innovation and making food cheaper and more reliable and more durable on the shelves. So we have to push back on this sort of regressive policies and regressive suggestions coming from environmental activists. It just makes life harder for us and parenting less fun.
And, Julie, the kids don't remember it. So this is the part that it'll chafe your buns if you're a mom and you want to be doing all these things, growing the bread, growing the wheat, raising the chickens. The kids will remember some of it. But what they remember the most is whether or not you looked old and tired and you were always annoyed because you're in there baking your 8th loaf of bread in 1 week instead of just buying 6 loaves and putting 4 in the freezer and letting the kids make all the sandwiches they want. And if they don't make sandwiches, you throw that extra loaf of bread in the freezer until it's needed. I mean, I encourage people, listen to Julie Gunlock, who your name is lighting up the online. Everyone's loving your last name is Gunlock. We got some Second Amendment lovers on here. I got to say, if you want to look young and you want to be saucy and have your husband still totally excited by you, even after the kids leave home, take advantage of some of the modern conveniences and spend your mental and physical capital and your time on the stuff that really matters to you. And leave the rest of it, like the growing of the eggs. We considered getting chickens, and they're not allowed in our municipality. And by the time we went over and tried to see if we could get an exemption, the kids had kind of like moved on. And so we didn't get them. We just have a dog, a hair dog that has to be groomed every 5 weeks. I mean, we're not as basic as we should be. But I just encourage people, find out Julie's stuff, her book, her work. Get your hands on it, read it. It'll free you up and allow you to just live and enjoy the conveniences that we have. Such a blessing to have them. And Julie Gunlock, Director, Center for Progress and Innovation at Independent Women's Forum. Julie, it's good to talk to you, girl.
I love talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's talk again soon. All right, we'll be back with more Stacy on the Right after these messages. I'm Stacy Washington. Keep it here.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
As a husband and wife, Lauren and I have always tried to find common interests. Growing up, Lauren was athletic but never followed professional teams. Not only was pro football my job, but I always seemed to be watching sports on TV. Over the years, Lauren has tried to watch with me. Throughout our marriage, I have looked for things I could do that she enjoys as well.
That's right. For example, I'd love to read and discuss books, but Tony doesn't. The idea of a book club pains him, but I know that he supports me in the things that I like doing. In any marriage, the key is respect and understanding of the other's needs ahead of your own.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Urban Family Talk presents Share-a-thon 2019. It's time to take a stand in the gap.
I've been listening to Urban Family for several years now, actually since before Addison baby number 4 was born. This radio ministry has blessed me immensely. It's a breath of fresh air and an almost favorite part of my life. Your solid stance of focusing on day-to-day issues through a biblical worldview lens is just a blessing and an encouragement to just many, many folks. As Christ followers, we are to go and tell the gospel. Well, y'all do it with such style, and I appreciate it. I thank you, and I pray for your ministry, and I pray that the Lord continues to bless you.
God is using Urban Family Talk to influence the lives of listeners across America. Join us for our 3-day Share-a-thon, April 23rd through 25th, here on listener-supported Urban Family Talk.
I'm Chad Pergram with the Speaker's Lobby. Impeachment is on the table. It may just depend on whose table you're talking about. Your family serve a traditional turkey at Thanksgiving, or a deep-fried turducken, cream gravy, giblet gravy, gravy with meat droppings, green bean casserole on the side, or cornbread, sweet potato pie, maybe pumpkin pie a la mode. It all hinges on whose house in which you are dining. Impeachment isn't on the table in the home of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But impeachment indeed is the main entree on the table of Democratic Representatives Rashida Tlaib of Michigan and Al Green of Texas. Despite the preliminary findings of Special Counsel Robert Mueller, Tlaib and Green are still pushing for the impeachment of President Trump. Green said that Mueller's findings, quote, didn't change his view one scintilla. Impeachment is not on the table until it is on the table, said Pelosi. Yet impeachment is on the bill of fare served by Green, Tlaib, and others. So, in fact, what constitutes the table? Pelosi. She's the one that counts. And that's why impeachment is hardly the main course for most Democrats. With the Speaker's Lobby, Chad Pergram, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
By the way, guys, nothing artificial about if we don't win, if you don't win, you got a problem. If you win, we win, their future. Right, you realize 54% of the American people think their children will never reach the standard of living they've reached. That's never happened before. 54%. And you guys can sit at the edge, or I don't want you to have to stand all alone, but it's up to. By the way, he gave me permission to touch him. All right? Why don't you sit in the room like that?
All right, so that was Joe Biden speaking at this event, and he kind of revived the controversy around him touching the kids and the women and everybody else. And I mean, the crowd responded well to that, but it remains to be seen whether Americans will give him the same kind of wholehearted, enthusiastic pass for what he says is he's just being affectionate and he's the same with everyone and he didn't do anything wrong and it wasn't untoward and no one was upset about it, and contrast that with the comments of women. I also think it's interesting that CNN, and this is totally off show sheet here, but CNN did this almost hit piece on Kamala Harris, highlighting the fact that she gave someone who killed a police officer, the guy just happened to be Latino, young, married for a few years with a small child, like barely a toddler, a baby, just learning how to take her first steps. And he was killed by an illegal alien. And the wife said she never got a call from Kamala Harris, who was then just recently elected prosecutor. And they have footage of her walking down the hallway, you know, stomping with her, letting the hair fly and letting the whole, you know, I'm woman, hear me roar, walk in heels, and being guided around by her staffer by the elbow. And she just never reached out to the family. And before the guy was convicted or anything, she announced that he would not receive the death penalty because the people of California, that's what they wanted. And so they wouldn't go after the death penalty. Now, as the prosecutor, it was her choice to make the decision as to whether or not they should put the death penalty on the table or leave it off. She made the decision to leave it off. They hadn't even convicted the guy yet. And so they were insulted. Even Dianne Feinstein came out against what she said. Now, she later reversed herself, but the point is, this is not the kind of thing you would normally expect to see from CNN against someone on their side. And yes, CNN has a side, and their side is for the Democrats. So I wasn't sure if pigs were flying through the air or what, but what they know that we don't know, but I guess we'll find out more. I think, circling back around to what Joe Biden said, I want to point out that if you're a parent and you've seen something uncomfortable like that happen and it was your child, to have the same person who was touchy-feely with your child make a joke about it later, it's smarmy. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not okay. And so they laughed and everything, but I think it's just that so if you idolize Joe Biden and you think he should be the president of the United States, you don't care what he's done. And a reference to that would, I guess, be really insulting to you, where to me, it's just appropriate to look at his previous behavior. So that's just weird. I think the whole thing is really weird. It shows you how far down the pike we've come from where we used to kind of put the comfort, or at least the discomfort, the apparent obvious discomfort of children and women used to be much more of a concern. And now it isn't. And I think that's because of this push to have public spaces, degenderized. You have, transgender people. I decide I'm a man today. I decide I'm a woman tomorrow. Go in whatever bathroom they want. Kids who are sexually confused going into, demanding to be on football teams, go in locker rooms, go in, different places. And if they're given an alternative accommodation, it's like, no, I have to be in the room with these other kids. And parents saying, you have to do this because if you don't, we'll be bigots. And so kids being made to stuff down, being uncomfortable, undressing in front of what is a biological male just because the biological male says he's a girl. If you go that far with kids in K through 12 education and you start justifying that and you start vilifying people who raise the alarm, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten direct messages from people who are like, you're so bigoted and hateful towards transgendered. I'm not. I don't hate anybody. I don't have the energy, to be honest with you. I just don't have the energy to hate. Now, I dislike the actions of quite a few people, but hatred, that takes too much energy for me. And I think it's more about them understanding what the upset is, and they don't have a justification. They can't answer it, so they go to name calling and stuff like that. And that's fine. We see you. We know what you're up to. But I think, I feel bad for the kids. Because now you've got Joe Biden showing up at these events and people are pushing their kids up on stage with him. And the kids might be unaware of the controversy surrounding him. Or, you know how kids are nowadays with their iPads and their phones. They might be aware of it. And they might be wondering to themselves, why is my mom putting me up here with this guy? I know he says he's going to be much more careful about the way he is around people. But why? I just, in a country of 320 million people, I resurrect my question from the Clinton campaign. Why was Hillary Clinton the only person the Democrats could find? There were no other qualified women. And now here we are again. Now it's Joe Biden. They don't have any new blood that they're willing to actually put anything behind. And please miss me, Bernie bros, with the whole idea that Bernie Sanders is new blood. He's not new. He's got the old ideas from the late 1800s and the early 1900s. Communism, socialism, bread lines, government command and control. He's not the new guy. And a lot of these other ones aren't the new guy either. The new guy or the new girl. They're all retreads. Same old failed ideas, same old failed proposals, all of them wrapped in the new, shiny aluminum foil of racism. We got to fight racism. We got to stop racism. I mean, you would think that we were having race crimes every day all over the country. We are not. In a country this large, if racism was that big of a problem, it would be legitimate stories of race hatred type crimes all over the news all the time. It's the same thing they try to make you think whenever there's a mass shooting, that gun owners are the problem. If gun owners were the problem with 450 to 600 million guns in this country, everybody would know about it, because the problem would be that there weren't very many people left, because the gun owners would have taken everybody out, right? If that was the problem, isn't it a logical conclusion that the ones who owned all the guns would have taken everybody else out by now? So we know it's not the gun owners. We know it's not. We just know it's a deflection. It's not that every single person who's not of color is just a total raging racist, because whites are still the majority in this country. How could they possibly all be racist and everybody, we're all just still living our lives, still employed, still got stuff to do? How's that possible? So we got to talk about this. And I'm surprised. I'm legitimately surprised. The strange case of the disappearing Virginia Democrat scandal. Now, this is by Caleb Howe over at Mediaite, and I'm so glad that he, as a conservative, is putting up with whatever drama he's got to put up with to keep the conservative voice alive over there at Mediaite. So remember, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, Mr. Keep the Baby Comfortable while we decide whether or not we're going to kill it. He had a photo op signing, he had a ceremonial signing of legislation on foster care. And there was a bipartisan group of state officials and legislators that were behind him during the signing. And Carlos Johnson, a young man who aged out of foster care in the state of Virginia and has been the face of the campaign to improve the system and increase the number of foster families in Virginia, he was seated next to him. Nice moment, great photo op. But how is it that this is the situation for Northam 2 months after he said infanticide was okay in Virginia? This is how we know that, and I'm not downgrading if you work at a church or if you're, don't feel downgraded here, but I'm just assessing the lay of the land as it is. Church, we are not on fire and we're not igniting the culture when he can make a statement like that and he's still seated in the governor's chair and all the churches in Virginia are still packed out on Sundays and people are still, we're going to brunch on Sunday after church and all that stuff. But no churches have raised up their hands and said, wait a minute, you just need to know next time you're up for election, not one member of this congregation will vote for you because you can't talk about killing live babies and still be the governor of Virginia. No press conferences, no national day of prayer type ceremonies, no churches showing up at the steps of the legislative house there and the governor's mansion anywhere. Nothing. Utter silence. And this is 2 months ago that he said that. He also said remember he was the moonwalker. He admitted he wore blackface. He's a member of the party that has literally changed the tenor of conversation in America to that of everything's racist. This bottle of water is racist. This teal dress is racist. I'm a racist. Everybody and everything is racist because of the Democrats. But their guy, Governor Northam, he gets to wear blackface and stand in pictures with the KKK, and he's still got his job. Steve King, we don't even know what he really said because the New York Times article could have been a total fabrication. It's just his word against the reporter. and he lost his committeeships. And this guy's still running around doing whatever he wants. Also, Attorney General Mark Herring had a blackface scandal. Also in February, Justin Fairfax, remember the lieutenant governor, black guy, young, up-and-coming, rising star in the Democratic Party? He was accused of sexual assault by 2 women. No resignations, no repercussions, nothing. No one's been stepped aside. No one's been forced out. No one's stepped down. No one's been stripped of anything. Nothing has happened to these men. Now, I ask you, the next time someone says that Republican legislator did this, that Republican said that, what would be the impetus for us to do anything in light of this? Why are we constantly ripping our people down when these are legitimately concerning issues that have been raised about these men, and they have walked away scot-free? The Democrats have simply chosen to look the other way, to not be concerned about what these guys have done. And Fairfax is innocent until proven guilty, so we don't know if he's guilty of these things, but that is not the same kind of largesse that was given to Kavanaugh, was it? Was Kavanaugh innocent until proven guilty, or was it that we had to believe Christine Blasey Ford and her Vaseline caked up glasses that she was wearing? So, and lest we forget, Keith Ellison. Remember him? He was accused of sexual assault, just crazy stuff. And he just left his position in Congress, and now he's running, I forget what he's doing, AG in Minnesota, something like that. Remember somebody that we all knew and loved back in the Fox News days, Megyn Kelly? Didn't she just lose her job on the Today Show for simply saying that everyone used to do, costumes and sometimes it was blackface? I mean, the comment she made was really benign. It wasn't that she was justifying blackface or racism. She was just talking about the way it was where she grew up. And she lost her job. Now, she walked away sweet because that attorney set up a good contract for her. She's an attorney. She set up a good contract for herself. She knew these liberals might turn on me at any time, and if they do, they're going to pay me all the way out the door. And she got paid. I like it a lot. That's the way you should set it up if you're going to set it up. So unbelievable that there have been no repercussions. What I'm hoping is that we're going to learn something from this. One of the things that I think is super important for us to do is to keep our eyes peeled and our ears peeled and our eyes peeled and ears open, if I could talk today. And make sure that we are aware that the Democrats plan to resurrect the whole Access Hollywood tape thing for 2020. And we should not only be not concerned about it, we should be yawning. I mean, like yawning hard, like you're about to fall asleep any second. We should be simply just keep on talking about whatever you were talking about. If they say Access Hollywood, it's almost like you can't hear it. Words you can't hear for 100, Alex, that we should not be able to even receive any information having to do with anything like that. If I hear Access Hollywood, I'm going to say Governor Northam, Lieutenant Governor Fairfax. I'm sorry, what? You don't know who they are? I don't know what Access Hollywood is. Oh, it's a tape. It's nothing. Move on. That's how it's going to be for me. I don't know about y'all. I mean, these people are joking around about killing babies, and we're supposed to be upset about a tape from 11 years ago where the president was bragging. I just don't. I won't. That's the answer to that. All right. That's the show for today. Thank you for being here and making your home at American Family Radio. Have a blessed evening. Good evening from the Heartland.